Welcome. I'm Dr. Nick Martin, and I want to thank you for watching this presentation on ego medicine. Ego medicine is a self-health approach that my wife, Reverend Linda M. Martin, and I have been using over the past several years. This approach is utilized to help heal our ego or human energy where needed. The word heal involves the need to help where necessary to move our ego energy from a place of imbalance to a place of balance. A place where it is positive, where it is healthy, and where it can work for us rather than against us within 10 key areas of life that we have found have a tremendous impact upon whether things are where they want them to be or where they are not. I'm going to talk a little bit about those key life areas. The first of them involves our ability to work with people. Over the years, we have found that one of the key abilities or skills within our life is the ability to work with people, to play with people, or to undertake social interactions with people. When our ego energy is positive, when it's healthy, when it's in balance, we can undertake the types of interactions that are very healthy and productive and allow us to grow, as well as the other people we are working with. When ego energy is imbalanced, and this imbalance can be a matter of problems with our power, our flexibility, or our vulnerability, it often weakens our experiences and our relationships with others. Things don't seem to happen as well when our ego energy is imbalanced. A second key life area involves our ability to form close relationships. And by close relationships, I'm talking about the ones that involve our family, our partner or our spouse, our children, our parents, and our close friends. These are the relationships in which we are able to experience a very deep connection if our ego energy is in balance. When it is not, we often experience great difficulty in working within these relationships. We tend to get less rather than more out of these relationships. A lot of times the kind of communication, the compassion, the ability to compromise, and our ability to create is unhealthy. It doesn't work, and as a result, we progressively become more removed or distant from the people who we may spend large portions of our lives. So our ego energy, when it is healthy, can facilitate that opportunity to experience the best we can know within those important relationships. Our ego energy, when it is healthy, also plays a role in our ability to accept ourselves and our ability to love ourselves. One of the largest issues that many people face that I have seen in my work is self-acceptance. Our ability to accept ourselves as we are, our ability to like ourselves as we are, and to love ourselves as we are. It appears that this relationship, this capacity, has a tremendous ripple effect upon our other relationships, the kind that I mentioned earlier. Our ego energy, when it is healthy, allows for this ability to love ourselves in healthy ways. When it is less healthy or imbalanced, again, we begin to have difficulty in how we look at ourselves, how we know ourselves, how we like ourselves, how we love ourselves. You have heard the word self-esteem, and a lot of times our self-esteem can become quite low or quite high. But in either case, the relationship with ourself is not healthy. The next key life area affected by our ego energy is our ability to achieve using our potential. Our ability to use all of the talents and skills that we have given It is this area of our life that ultimately leads us to know and fulfill our life's purpose. When our ego energy is in a healthy, balanced place, it allows us to make use of those abilities, to make use of those talents. We don't have a fear of failure, as often occurs for some, or even a fear of success, which may occur for others. We don't work to overachieve in order to prove ourselves worthy of others. And we don't underachieve. We make use of those talents. And ultimately, as a result of using those talents, we come to know the purpose of our lives, a purpose that often involves service, both within the human and divine realm. The next key life area has to do with our ability to grow our mind. And when I say grow our mind, I am talking about our ability to increase the level of reality-based thinking, the degree of logical, rational, truth-related thinking that exists within our values, within the knowledge we carry within the different types of thoughts that we apply in all parts of our lives. We refer to this as our ego space. And our ego space plays a tremendous role in our ability to grow as a person as we move through our lifetime. When our ego energy is imbalanced, this growth process is tremendously undermined. A lot of times we may adhere to thinking, to knowledge, to values, to beliefs, to prejudices, and to illusions, unaware that we are doing that, and that the quality of our ego space is in actuality quite weak. Now, this has nothing to do with whether we are a good, well-meaning, and intelligent person. What we're saying is that a lot of times our ego energy, when it is weakened through imbalance, often overrules all of that intelligence, all of that goodness, and all of that well-meaningness. So our ego energy can be enhanced, and as a result, the ability to grow our mind also is enhanced. The next key life area has to do with our ability to work with change, to manage change that enters into our life. Change is inevitable, and you probably already know that. Its inevitability is rooted in the fact that it is built upon energy. And energy doesn't stand still. The energy that may be involved with developmental change, the energy that may be involved with technological, social, and or situational change, is an energy that we must come to terms with, because it will always be a part of our lives. Now, when our ego energy is healthy and in balance, we work with change. We work to understand it, and we work to manage it in ways that are productive for ourselves and others who may be involved with the change. When our ego energy is imbalanced, again, by power issues or flexibility issues or vulnerability issues, we tend to work less effectively with change. Some people with low ego flexibility may find themselves trying to avoid change or to undo change that may have occurred. Some may think with high ego power that they will control the change, that they will give the permission for change to happen in their lives. Both of these are illusions, because change is happening in our lives, whether we know it or not. The sooner we wake up to its occurrence and our willingness to work with it using healthy, balanced, egoic energy, the further along we can be in working with the inevitable changes of life. The next key life area deals with adversity. Our ability to deal with the inevitable failures, losses, mistakes that may occur within our lives. These are often occurring because inherently we are imperfect. As imperfect human beings, they are going to take place. The sooner we awaken to that, with the usage of healthy, balanced egoic energy, the sooner we can move forward and respond to the inevitable failures that may cross our path within our lives. You know, the successful people in life are not the people who have never failed, but those people who have failed and responded well to it. They are the persons who become the winners. The next key life area deals with our ability to experience genuine happiness. Genuine happiness. It seems to be one of those experiences in life that so many are seeking, but so few people know. Unfortunately, many may take a detour involving lots of feelings of sadness or depression, lots of feelings of anger or resentment. Some may get caught up in lots of feelings of fear or anxiety. And even some may get caught up in what we call pseudo-happiness. This is pleasure-based happiness rooted in meeting physiological needs. It often feels good, but it's not genuine happiness, because genuine happiness is not something that you can buy or purchase. An example of genuine happiness would be a person who is able to live in peace with themselves, with the people in their life, and the world at large. That is where true happiness begins. There is so much more to be said about that, but I will leave you with that thought for now. The next key life area our ego energy is called upon to help us with deals with stress and stressors. We all are confronted with a mixture over time of stressors and stress in our life. These are the challenges we may come to know in the form of financial concerns, health-related concerns, work-related concerns, and family-related concerns. All of those are a part of our human condition, and the stressors we deal with can either manage us or we can manage them. The difference is, where is one's ego energy? When it's balanced, we are able to manage it. We are to manage the stressors and keep the size of the stressors where they are and allow them to exit our lives. When we don't, the stressors become much larger, the stress becomes more intense, and as a result, we begin to experience some significant deterioration in the quality of our life. You know, you may have heard this phrase, stress is the silent killer, and it truly is. It has a profound effect upon our health. Lots of research around the issue of stress has shown us that cancer and heart disease are intimately connected to the stress that we are under, oftentimes unrecognized or ill-managed. The last key life area that I want to mention, to which our ego energy must handle and work with us rather than against us, deals with conflict. The inevitable conflict that occurs in all of our lives. You know, we all have a distinctive ego space or an ego mind, and we carry it with us as we move down the path of our lives. And this often may lead into some disagreements, some small, some large, hopefully less frequent, possibly more frequent. And the quality of the conflict we experience can either be productive and constructive and actually lead to what I would call win-win between the participants within the conflict, whereas other resolutions may involve something that's destructive and leads to distancing between the people involved. You know, conflict is ultimately for us to learn something either about ourselves or from others. And if we can work with it, many good things can happen. We don't need to avoid it. We don't need to be afraid of it. We just need to work with it. Now, I've just talked with you about how all of the things that our ego energy can help us with that can lead to positive things happening in our lives that make for a better life and a better you, the best version of ourselves. One other added benefit when we heal our egoic energy with the use of mental medicine or ego medicine is our ability to access our divine energy, to connect to our divinity. When our ego energy is healthy and in balance, the door opens. This divine energy is already there. It's already waiting for us to connect to it. It only awaits our ability to remove the obstacles to that connection, the obstacles that often involve imbalanced egoic energy. As the great Islamic poet Rumi said, "What you seek is seeking you." And he was right. Now, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit more precisely about exactly what ego medicine is. There are three equally important contributors to what we refer to as ego medicine. 30 years of working with people as a diagnostician, as a therapist, as a consultant, and as an educator, dealing with thousands of people who have shared their lives with me, their relations with me, their experiences with me, and the opportunity to focus on an extended basis on this egoic energy have taught me what I am going to share with you. The three contributors to ego medicine include understanding truly what ego is and what ego isn't. You know, there's a lot of thoughts that are expressed about ego, and some of them are partially correct in that they speak to the importance of power and will in our lives and how much of it we have. But ego is fundamentally and most importantly an energy, as I've said before, and it's an energy whose primary purpose and actually sole purpose is to promote our survival. A survival not only in the mortal sense, that is, helping to make sure we don't die prematurely from some form, but also survival in those 10 key life areas of our lives to help us with each of those areas. Now, when our ego energy is imbalanced, it promotes all those things that I referred to, whether it's close relationships or dealings with conflict or dealing with change and achievement and so on. But when our ego energy is imbalanced, we begin to enter into what I believe Buddha was referring to as suffering. Not just suffering in the more immediate, painful sense, but suffering that often comes through our thoughts, suffering through our behaviors, suffering through our emotions, and even in our physiology. An example of that might be somebody who is living in a place where they find it difficult to trust other people. They don't have a good reason for not trusting people, but they just don't. Now that's suffering. The person may not think that's suffering because it doesn't have that immediate, maybe more direct painful quality, but nonetheless, it is suffering. I could go on for literally days telling you about the different kinds of suffering that humans experience, both the more immediate, painful kind that people know directly, as well as the more subtle kind. What I would say is very much similar to what Buddha said in his fundamental pronouncement, which was, all is suffering. Now, our ego energy works to develop what we know as our ego mind or our ego space. Our ego space or ego mind is the place where we accumulate in our brain all of the knowledge, all of the beliefs, all of the attitudes, the values, the prejudices and illusions that we carry out into the world in our dealings with our daily life, the 10 key life areas, as I mentioned earlier. And the quality of that ego space has a profound positive or negative effect. Now, this workshop of the mind, as I refer to it, leads us toward the development of an ego self. An ego self. That ego self is all of the patterns of behavior, the patterns of thought, the patterns of emotions, and even the patterns of physiology that we represent in the world, that we bring into the world in our daily life. So the ego self is built upon the workings of the egoic mind, which is rooted in the egoic energy. Our discussion of ego medicine doesn't just talk about how can you change your ego self, or just how can you change your ego mind, but we also talk about, and much more deeply, something that is not discussed in many other contexts when it comes to healing, our egoic energy. Unless we deal with our egoic energy and the issues of power, flexibility, or vulnerability at work, we often see only symptomatic changes taking place in our lives that don't take deep hold. We don't see true transformation of our lives. So it's important to understand that in order to get the idea of ego medicine. Now, the second important contributor to ego medicine is tuning into your specific, distinctive egoic energy. We all have ego energy, but that ego energy is not the same. Some of us have a lot of ego power. Some of us have a little ego power. Some have a lot of ego flexibility, too much. Some have too little. Some have a lot of ego vulnerability, and some have little, if any, ego vulnerability. And it is the combination of those levels for each of those ego components, as I refer to them, power, flexibility, and vulnerability, that make the ego energy that we are, and that the ego energy that shapes our egoic mind, and ultimately our egoic self. And we need to tune into that energy. Now, that sounds like a really large task, and it is. It's a sizable task. But that's the purpose of our work, to assist you with that. We assist you with that within all three of our books. Ego Therapy, a method for healing your whole self. Ego Spiritualism, awakening to your human and divine self. And the two voices within, balancing the energies of ego and spirit to enhance your life. In each of those areas, we talk about what each of those energies look like, particularly as they move further from a place of balance. We connect those discussions with the 10 key life areas that I mentioned earlier again. Those life areas are mirrors. They are mirrors, they are reflections of the egoic energy that we are living. So I point you toward those mirrors with the information that you can learn about in our books. I also want to mention that on our website, on the page entitled Roles People Live, you see some examples, some of them probably likely to be familiar, maybe in yourself or others, that involve the kind of roles that we start to live in, particularly as our egoic energy moves further and further out of balance. For example, some of the people we can be or have been that are possessing high ego power may live the role of a dictator. They may live the role of a narcissist. They may live the role of a bully or a control freak. Some people may be living in the role involving low ego flexibility, in which they are living the role of a racist, a sexist, a political extremist, or a religious extremist. Some of this is very familiar and current with today's world, and we can see why it's happening. We can see that energy that's going on in the lives of these persons. Some people may be living a higher degree of ego vulnerability, and I would have to raise my hand about that in my younger days. The roles that people might fall into include living that of a perfectionist, or living the role of an overachiever, or the role of someone who is the traumatized, somebody who's been victimized by having encountered abusive experience in their earlier life, or some who have gone to war and have seen the hell of war and been brought to the edge of their own lives. So we offer an opportunity for you to get that reflection, to get that connection to what that egoic energy could look like, so that you can weigh it against yourself and your experiences. The third and final area that affects that involves ego medicine involves the use of reality-based, ego-related, reality-based thinking. And this involves working with rational thoughts and learning the difference between belief and truth. Now that's a really hard distinction sometimes to make. And sometimes we often get pulled, particularly when our egoic energy is out of balance or imbalanced, towards thoughts that are less logical, less rational, less healthy than they could be. And again, it's not a matter of our intelligence or how good we are or how well intended we are. It has to do with what this energy is doing in our lives that we are not aware of. Again, within our work, within our books, we provide lots of examples of what non-reality-based thinking is and what reality-based thinking is. One quick example that comes to mind is when people live low ego flexibility. People who are caught up in the web of that type of energy often equate deficiency or differentness with deficiency. So when a person appears to them in a different light, be they a person different in religion or racially or sexually or culturally, this person often tends to look at them as if they are deficient. You know, one of the great characters that was on television, I think a transformational character, was a character from the 70s television show All in the Family, and that character was Archie Bunker. Archie Bunker was the poster child for low ego flexibility. Now, Archie was probably a good guy. He was perhaps a well-meaning person. He was an intelligent person. But none of that stood a chance against the low ego flexibility that he was living that led often to his bigotry. So again, lots of examples we provide to help you understand what we mean by reality-based thinking and non-reality-based thinking tied to the kind of ego energy that a person is living. I want to end this presentation by asking a question, answering it, and giving you a quotation. So the question is, why does ego medicine work? Ego medicine works because it is intimately connected to human and divine truth. Truth is truly brilliant and empowering when we make an effort to connect to it as intimately as possible. As Jesus said, And ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And it will.